The gospel lesson comes from Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, concerning the Pharisee and the tax collector. Jesus told this parable to certain people who had convinced themselves that they were righteous and who looked on everyone else with disgust. Two people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed about himself with these words, "God, I thank you that I'm not like everyone else, crooks, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of everything I receive." But the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even lift his eyes to look toward heaven. Rather, he struck his chest and said, "God, show mercy to me, a sinner." I tell you, this person went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and those who make themselves low will be lifted up.
Well, I must confess, I didn't have much time this week to worry about the sermon. Had a lot of other things going on. Had a great week. The clergy conference was a chance of learning new things and then exploring things as elders, because we're all in this together. We have a covenant. We sign, every time we change appointments, we sign this covenant that says, I won't go back and interfere with the new pastor at my favorite church. And we just take care of our own. And our covenant is to be here together. I call it tag team pastoring, because you do what you can do, and then you go to the ropes and you touch somebody else, and they climb in and you climb out, and they do what they can do. And it's a great way of doing ministry for pastors and for churches. I told you about the Passages presentation museum, and again, that was a fantastic chance to get in touch with all this happened in the church, from the beginning of scrolls at all to the church in England in the 1600s. Remarkable time. So I didn't get a sermon done. I don't have a thing to say. Jesus tells of this Pharisee who just goes on and on about how great he is, and he points at the tax collector, and he's just going, "Oh my God, have mercy on me, a sinner." And Jesus says, that's the one. So that's all we're going to have to talk about. But what's wrong with the Pharisee? He tithes. No preacher in the world minds a Pharisee who tithes. And he fasts as he's supposed to. He does all of his religious work. He wants to be close to God. What's wrong with him? I think what's wrong with him is he thinks he is the star of the show. And he looks at other people and he only sees them in relationship to himself, and it is, I'm on top and they're just extras in my movie. I was just watching the movie Legends of the Fall, and the older brother the actor playing that played it as if the older brother was the star of the movie. Unfortunately, he wasn't. It was the second brother who was the star. And sometimes we do that, don't we? We play life as if we're the star of the movie. And then we discover maybe we're not. I think of some of those, the bad guys come rushing at the hero, and they think they're the star of the movie. And then they get blown away, and they weren't the star after all. I think that Jesus is pointing out it's a problem. It's a problem to compare yourselves to others and say, I'm sure glad I'm not a Mexican. I'm sure glad I'm not African. And maybe we are, but the fact is that wasn't your choice, and that wasn't a blessing. It's just the way it is. And they are as much a star of their movie as you are of yours. So it was kind of lack of humility there. I just read that the word humble or humility comes from the same root as humus, and that is dirt. And as you know, dirt's pretty humble. But it's absolutely necessary for everything else. Humility. And on the other hand, this tax collector, I sometimes wonder if he wasn't more like Michael Corleone in the Godfather movies. You know, Michael didn't want to be the Godfather, but his older brother was killed, and his next older brother was a mess, emotional mess. And so the job fell on him, and he had to do what he had to do to be the Godfather. And one of the things he had to do was to take vengeance upon his brother for ratting out his oldest brother. And he had him killed. Remember in the third movie here in Rome, and he goes to a bishop or a cardinal, and he says, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." And I'm wondering if that isn't what the tax collector is doing. I mean, he's basically doing what he has to do to live in this world as he has to live, and it is evil. It is wrong. But he comes to the temple, and he has his eyes down, and he says, Lord, forgive me, I am a sinner. And Jesus says, that's it. It's all right. He's the one who goes home justified, whereas the busy Pharisee, the busy church person, the good, upstanding pillar of the community, isn't justified. And sometimes that seems a little wrong. That the Godfather gets forgiven, and yet the good church person is still wrong. Part of it has to do with the reality of sin. Those who are at the Bible study on Wednesday night, was that a good one or what? The guy says, God, holiness demands God's wrath on sin. And you are a sinner. And you deserve God's wrath. And God's mercy drove God to pour that wrath not on us, but upon His Son for our sake. The Christian center is that we are sinners. And there's no way out of it by ourselves. No amount of fasting, no amount of tithing, don't take that too seriously. No amount of seeing yourself highlighted against the great mass of others who are not as good as you. None of this can do it. If my zeal no longer knows, if my tears forever flow, all for sin cannot atone. God saves. And God alone. That's at the heart. Because in fact, each and every one of us is a Pharisee, and each and every one of us is a tax collector. We have both parts of us. We have the good man who doesn't realize he's a sinner, and we have the sinner who realizes he needs help. And these wrestle within us. The beautiful thing of it is God put this all in this world to play itself out in our lives. And the only thing we have to do, and actually we don't even do this ourselves, God is the one giving us the power to do this. We must accept God's love. That's it. It's that simple. The package is under the tree, and all we have to do, it's got your name on it, and all you have to do is open it up, and there it is. Did I tell the story of the young fellow who was graduating from Harvard, and his dad said, I'll give you whatever you want, and his son said, oh, I'd kind of like to have a new Porsche. And the father went on and had their graduation, and Dad came up to give the boy his gift. He handed him a Bible, and the boy said, a Bible? A Bible? I know I'm a lawyer and I need a Bible, but no, Dad. And he got mad, and he left, and he never talked to his father again. It wasn't until his father had passed away, the young man, the now not so young man, is going through his father's things. He comes across that blessed Bible, and there seems to be a bookmark in there. So he opens it up. The bookmark is a check for the price of a Porsche. Yeah. That's the way it is. God has already given you such a great and marvelous blessing, and the only way to get to it is to be absolutely, positively honest about yourself with God. One of the things we did in the clergy session, when we were studying this thing, is we talked about other. We're into this diversity thing, and that's, we try to take people of different types and styles and genders and orientations and race and ethnicity. We try to just be tolerant of them, and that's not enough. We must recognize and fully appreciate the otherness of the other. And that's hard to do, especially out here where the others are outside our city limits, We're all kind of the same. But in fact, we aren't. We all are others to somebody. And I want you to think of some time when you were the other. When you were the one who was different. And when we were asked to discuss that, it came to me that when I was in school, in a little town like this, I was a sissy. I was not athletic. I was not strong. I was not a fighter. I didn't like to fight. I didn't care for any of that stuff, guy stuff. And I was different. And this was pointed out to me almost every recess when they would yell, "Dog pile on Moorman!" And everybody would come and whomp, except for Carl, who was a good-sized young man, and he would land on us all last. Whomp. By coming to grips with our own otherness, we start to see others in a different light. Start to realize that they aren't going to be like us. They don't have to be, because I don't have to be like everybody else, right? And they are who they are. And then we can move, according to our lecturer, we can move then to not only engaging with them as others, but we can learn to leverage our differences. When he said that, I was thinking of, there is no energy in this universe unless there's a difference. Water does not flow anywhere when everything's flat. It has to be running downhill. Or another guy pointed out that it's like music. If you have one note played with the same duration over and over again, you've got the sound you hear at Sam's Club. Beep, 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 beep. It's not music. You have to have all these different notes with different pitches and different durations and different articulations so that you have harmony and dissonance and a beauty that is impossible to describe with words. Well, so is it with others and ourselves when we come together. When we realize that we all are Pharisees and we all are tax collectors and we all have our blind side and we all have our broken hearts. I've got a little exercise for you this week. When you're on the street and you see somebody walking by, particularly somebody you have no idea who they are, I want you just to imagine their broken heart. All right? Just imagine their broken heart. And then imagine their greatest joy. And you don't know exactly what it is, but you can imagine the breakup they've been through. Or you imagine the child who lived. Or some miracle in their lives. And realize that their lives are just as rich and varied and full of strength and full of failure as yours. And then with that we can go on bended knee and we can say, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner.